Welcome Farming Simulator YouTubers. Beautiful sunrise today on a cloudy day in Simulation World. What I'm going to be doing today is trying to do some tricky stuff on, this is field 18 in the background, and trying to harvest some barley. And then I'm going to use the Krone big X1100 to gather the swath, run that down to the biogas plant where it's like printing money. And so this is some of the stuff that you see in the background that you're going to need. And I've got the field all ready to go there. The barley's grown. So yeah, I'll challenge some of the difficulties and talk about some of the difficulties and how I set up Courseplay. The only mod I've got is Courseplay in this one. I've got some, conveyor belts, but for the most part, don't use them for this video. So let me run through the equipment real quick. I'm using the 7130, mostly because they have a 9.6 meter width, and my sow is like 9 meters. And if you look at my courses, so they're 9 meter swaths, every 12 meter offset. So there's not too much to do here. I just load up a course. It's a custom course. Just everything else is pretty much standard here. So I'll tell you a little bit later about how I make some of my courses. You can see it in the background. It's kind of truncated, squared off, and then I've got some other stuff doing stuff, so I'll talk about that. But what's important for every tipper, especially when you're going to use the Krone to collect stuff, because the Krone, every tipper wants to be drawn to the Krone, it seems, from a 1,000 meter radius, every adjacent field. So you have to go in and, of course, you set your courses on it, but also you need to go over to the Combine tab. So, and assign all the tippers to a harvester, or assigning to a combine. So, select it manually. I'll go find the axial flow that's closest here, and that's the one right there. Just popped by it. My bad. And so you got to do that for every single tipper, and do it for the other tippers on the other fields around it, because, like I said, that Krone will, one of the problems with the Krone, it'll draw to it. Once you do that, you don't need to put your course onto the field. You can take your courses off the field too, and that helps, as I'm going to do a little higher. So here's the star of the show, the Krone Big X1100. I'm using it here with the Easy Flow 300 on the front just to gather the swath. That's unusual. Most people will use a giant combiner to harvest the corn and destroy the corn. In the background, you'll see another scorpion-looking vehicle. If you don't have the money for the Krone, then you can use that other vehicle in the back on the front of a tractor. But course-wise, it's the same course as the harvester. I used a slightly different name because I park it elsewhere, but you could use the same as the harvester. It would just bump behind it. I'm going to assign a couple trailers here. These are like the tractor trailers, the 47,000 capacity with the dolly. I like the turning radius on that, so I'll assign a course to that. I gotta assign these just like the other, all tippers got to be assigned. I'm gonna assign them to the Big X, and I'm also gonna set these to like a maximum speed and trim it down to 25 opposed to like 31 or 38, whatever the max speed of my tractors are. You need some pretty powerful tractors on this field 18 because of the grade. Here's where one of the limitations are in the standard game is that you have, for as far as a cultivator combination sower, you have the 9 meter one and the 6 meter one. This one's got a larger capacity than 9 meter. It's kind of a longer item. So I use that and I stick it at 9 meters. If you want to use like the bigger harvesters and go with like 12 meters or 13.7, I think is the widest with a 45 footer with the New Hollands. I'll come back and talk a lot about that. So after that, you got a normal sprayer. Your sprayer's 26 meters, so that's another reason to keep, if you want to mow 2 rates at once, 13 would be the max. So you need to think about that when you have the larger combine that's over 13. On the 12, it's pretty good. It would split up pretty well. And what else do I got? These are the biggest buckets they got in the game, the 6400. When we get down to the biogas plant, that's where these are going to operate. So that's the biggest bucket. That's good enough for what I want to show you later. I got one other vehicle back here. It's a big, long tipper train. And the cheap trailers with the ball hitch like to chain themselves together, but you will usually want a big tractor to pull it. So one of my tricks is you see the block, the weight block, and if you attach a weight block back to one of those bar trailers, they'll hook up to the ball hitches. A lot of people have a trouble backing this cheap combine, you know, the 2100, 21,000. But in order to do that, only because it's got the front rotating hitch. So another trick I got here is, rather than trying to back it in, it's possible to back it in, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. And so what I'll do is I'm just going to simulate it here with my tippers. I use cheap tippers with the combine, so this is a cheap tractor with a cheap tipper. And I'll connect it to the front. There you go. And now I'll just drag it backwards adjacent to it, and then you can steer it a lot better as you stick it into the one that's waiting to be there, and that's how you get a nice long chain pretty quickly. It's a lot easier than trying to back it in. But if you want a challenge, you can try backing it in. A lot of people have a struggle with this, so I figured I'd show this real quick. Let me go ahead and turn it. You start to turn. That's the wrong way. Back it up. So now I'm going to go a little further. Just take your time, slow corrections, just like, you know, a real life trailer going backwards. Just take your time. And eventually, a little bit at a time here, I should get close enough. Let me change my angle just a little bit here. Yeah. There you go. Attach it. Pull it back a little, and you can keep on, you know, using those cheap old front twisting things to make a chain. So I'm going to run this on the pickup truck, but I start my course off with a lead in, and then I put a pause point. That's when you put a couple pause points on a trail in work mode. When you're running a harvester, it'll start your harvesters, it'll start the sowing, start the spraying and stuff like that. So I'm going to run this little high speed. Obviously your combines will run at like 6 miles per hour, and your sowers and fertilizers will run like 12 miles an hour, but I can go faster in the truck here in transport mode. So it'll run up here. Again, I've got 12 meter offsets with a 9 meter sow, and the harvester is just a little bit wider than the sow. That's why I do this. Now what's different about this field is it's got a lot of traffic right at the end of the field, going in opposite directions to both sides, east and west, which is the way you want to prefer to do this field. I mean, technically it gets traffic on the south side too. So I stopped this 50 meters short, and I also have to put a turn in here because that Krone requires turns, otherwise it really gets mucked up. And you'll see this when the Krone runs. Now when I run in my harvesters and my sow, I can get away with being a lot closer to the street and not have a lot of collisions. But with the Krone, you just have a ton of collisions, and you'll see that when I'm running the trailers. The other side down here, again, I've truncated it because they're all custom courses, and I have to put a turn in here too. I usually won't put the turns if I'm just not using the Krone, if I'm just using a harvester and a sower. So I was 25 meters short, and you'll see that the tippers run out almost to the street, but the street's going with me in this direction, at least for the first lane of the street, so not a lot of collisions. So let me zoom forward, because this is just going to go back and forth the field every 12 meter offset. So yeah, let me change. I had it on the harvester course. Let me change it to the fertilizer course, and we're getting to the end of the course here. So I try to run my courses so that, you know, the harvester takes an hour and the fertilizers take a half an hour or less, and then I do all my fields at once at one time of the day, and then I'll fast forward for the rest of the day at like 120 speed or 60 speed. So here I'm going to show you the end of the course, which is I've been doing all the straight line back and forth with turns. This one here, I just decided to loop it around the bottom just for the heck of it, get an extra little bit in there. And I originally planned on parking everybody on the other side, the starting side or the south side of the field, which is originally why I came out here. So I probably need to readjust some of this stuff. This field is also running a little bit longer than an hour. I really need to take like 3 or 4 swipes off of there. But at the end of the working course, I put a park or a wait. And that'll stop the harvesters, and it will fold up the sowers, and stop the sprayers. So when it'll stop there, and it'll flag me. Then I hit the continue, and it'll be all folded up. This is the sower, and it's going to come all the way back to another park point. And when you have this in working mode with the sower, it's a little trick here. It won't actually stop here. It'll stop, and then it'll autofill itself back up to the capacity. You don't need to hit the continue button, and it'll go on its way. So it's kind of autonomous, which is good. And I'm just showing you the rest of the course and fast forward, because it's going to come back and park it. and I'll put a park at the end, and that'll just freeze there till I get around in the rotation and stop it just by normal course work. So that's where you see the sower in its park position with the pause up there. So that's a neat trick. You combine all those courses together and rename it. I call it the 18 Blaze Sow. So let me go ahead and put the combine and start it here. You notice it's 9 o'clock, top of the hour. This is when I go out and set all my combines to go run at top of the hour once a day, or whatever the grow time is, right? So I'm not futzing around while the grow time is. So when it hits this pause point, it lowers the starts the combine and starts collecting. I'm going to request a driver right away. I keep 2 drivers, cheap drivers. They're just slightly off the field, but I assigned them to that combine, and so one of them will come over, and when that one gets filled, the other one will. So I don't really need a train or anything else like that. This also, I'm borrowing this combine because I said this field was too long for me. So that combine's going to do, eventually I'll change that over to 17 and the other half 18. I'm not doing the dog leg of 18. That combine I sent off to do 15 to do some canola, you know. So I'm starting here with 211K of barley in my inventory. So I know this field is going to collect right around that number, about 200K in barley the way I've got this set up. So that's what I'm going to get from harvesting and offloading it, you know, pretty standard Courseplay stuff. A lot of videos that show you how to just offload a combiner. And I've got my, it just ended there and was sitting behind the combine. So I normally don't put turns for a harvester, but I got to do it for the Krone, which is coming up next. So one thing it does, it will stop here if it's waiting on a tipper. So it'll stop the harvester. That's one of the reasons I don't like it. And the other reason is I didn't quite get this offset quite right here. So you see it picks up, rolls back, and goes back into action, as opposed to just making the turn and going on its way. I get a little further and get a little more fruit out of it. It's smart typically in that it waits to do the combine. I'll give you an example here. This is the combine that I set out on field 15, which is the adjacent field, harvesting canola. So a nice high income crop, second highest compared to that's silage that's going to be coming up, the biogas. That's why you do the biogas. But here I'm going to show what I typically do as a round corner. You can't really do this with the Krone. It tends to get hung up all the time. Even these harvesters sometimes get hung up when it's a left-hand turn. This is a right-hand turn coming up, but you can see it doesn't lose any speed or momentum, just kind of turns. And it'll go back uphill here. I mean, it leaves a little bit in the middle, but eventually the big long sower is going to come along and fill that back in and just override it. So not a big deal. That's what I normally do, but I have to do it different. You have to do it different when you're doing the Krone because of the collection problem. So I'm 15 minutes in, having a little bit of log jam here, but I'm going to stop that secondary. So I had that secondary harvester working on this field to click off. It looks like 3 rows, and I needed that to get it in the hour. Otherwise, this field takes a little longer than an hour. Takes another 15 minutes. So I just time it accordingly. I just like it a little bit quicker. So I'm going to set this guy off. I got to drain him of barley because he's going to do wheat. You can see the course is now set up there. I'm doing rounded edges on course 17, and he's also going to get that half of 18 in the upper right. You can see it there, the real steep hill. So he's going to maul off. I got to work out the timing a little bit on that. I just need to drop a couple rows. So 20 minutes in, it's time for the star of the show. So this is one of my 47,000 pound collectors. I'm going to set him in process, and I'll leave the other one for now because my stop point is adjacent to the field. And this Krone, the little chute there, likes to grab onto anything that's adjacent to the field, and it will, like I said, it will call harvesters from other fields if they're not, dedicated to other machines. So if you just leave them auto search, they'll end up getting sucked over to the Krone, even the one that's collecting canola there on field 15. So this one, the trailer has now acquired the Krone, so it's going to drive around behind it. Now, the interesting thing about the Krone is it's a harvester, but it doesn't collect, there's no collection in it. It's always zero. So you always have to have a trailer sync with it, and that's where sometimes it gets stuck on the corners. So there's the same type of thing. I'm going to come up to the pause point. It'll fire up the harvester, and as long as that tractor in the background is in position, this thing will take off like a rocket, at like 12 miles an hour. So it's fired up and it's waiting to acquire the trailer here, and it's off. And so you need these powerful trailers because not so much this south side of it, but as you get a little norther on the field, it requires a lot of power. So I'm going to start my second trailer just to keep 2 trailers is enough for me on this one. You need to add trailers if you have a longer path or whatnot, because these are going to fill up and then they're going to go off to the biogas and dump it. The reason why you do this silage is it's very profitable within the limitations of the biogas plant, which we'll talk about. But you can see we're going uphill here, so you need a tractor that keeps 12 mile per hour even with a pretty good load on the back, like 40,000 pounds, right? It needs to keep up with this Krone, otherwise it falls behind and it gets in a little hump step. Now as I get a little bit more north on the field, it gets even steeper. So yeah, I've got T8s. This is this green model. I forget the name of this green model, but it's one below the T8. So expensive tractors as opposed to the tractors that I've got just offloading, the cheap tractors, low power tractors. So the Swath is on, and I'm collecting the Swath and I'm dumping it in. That's why it's green. You can try to do the straw collectors, but it just collects straw, and you got to dump that straw over by the barn. It's a pain in the ass. It's not nearly as profitable as the silage, because the silage is, every ton is like $1,600, typically $1,500–1,600. Doesn't really change a lot. So as we do a turn here, you're going to learn why I truncated it. Maybe I didn't need to do 50 meters short, but you can see there's only like a 10-meter runoff to the road from the normal edge. So if you just auto-generate, it doesn't really work for you. So let me keep this tractor in. So you see it'd be well within. It'd be crashing into the fence in the background as we get a little further down the road. It's definitely in traffic, and then it's going to do this zigzag pattern here, right? So it's even further. I've got it stuck on the grass hill once, and I couldn't uncouple. I was trying to unload, and so I could push it off the hill. So it's hilarious. So it gets stuck all the time, and sometimes it gets stuck with the Krone itself if you don't give it room. The nice part is after the first row, I know it was on the left before and it's on the left again of the combine, but as it goes forward on the rest of this field, it'll stick to the south side. So as it heads back the other way, and we're going westbound now, as it heads back eastbound, the new tractors will acquire and be on the right side automatically. So you want to make sure your offload is on the south side on this particular setup. So I'm collecting, and you see how fast it's collecting. I'm up at 36,000 already. At 47,000, it'll be full. It'll go off its way. You notice the tractor behind it started to get in line at 50%. You can adjust that number anywhere, but it's going to fall behind, and then that bucket will fill over, and I'm going to try to get this thing down to the biogas and back in time to try to keep the combine, the X1100, going as quickly as possible. So I'm almost full here. I'm passing the start point. That start trigger right there is where I get off the field. So somewhere generally in the middle. You saw where the end point was. It was adjacent to the starting of the combines. So there we are. This guy's going to roll around. The Krone stops while it waits for the new tractor to acquire. The new tractor is going to acquire it. This is going to go off on its way. So I'll skip forward. This is it. I ran it down the street that's on the south side, and there's a little bit of traffic for half of it, but as soon as you get down to the biogas here, so field 18 is close to the biogas. A lot of people like to use field 21 and plant corn and not harvest the corn. It just destroys the corn, the Krone does. But you get plenty of this silage, which is what you really want. As a matter of fact, I'm going to dump 47,000 pounds. This graphic's a little bit off on this trailer, but it'll distribute correctly. So a little bit of a glitch with this particular trailer, but you can see how it just flows out nice and even. It's not compacting, it's 28% compacted, 29% compacted, but as you run over, it'll get more compacted, because what you got to do is get a certain fill level and then compact it 100%, and then you can wrap it, and 12 hours later you'll get beautiful silage that you can dump into the couple bins in the background. So it gives you a nice, easy. So that's 47,000 pounds, 23.5 tons at $1,500 is $35,000. At $1,600, it's a little more, and if you ever get the bonus multiplier, it's even more than that. So let me fast forward this video. This is just going to run back to its start point. What I want to check here is, it releases right away. So the other trailer's at 50%, no doubt. And as I get right here, that tractor is almost full. So 2 tractors is good enough. Seems to catch up. Matter of fact, there's your stop point. So it didn't quite get around to following it, but close enough. Just want to keep an eye on that, so it's, you know, Krone is in as much movement as quickly as it can. That's the trick behind this guy. Again, a lot of people use another field that's like 21, because to plant this with corn and to use the big header and just collect corn, there's a lot of videos out on that. Not a lot of videos for what I'm doing right here with the Courseplay automation in it. I'll collect over 500,000 pounds of silage just using that field 18, half of the, most of field 18, what I showed there. So at the 35-minute mark, I just sent my sower out onto field 15, and I'm going to send my sower out. So at the 20-minute mark, I had started the Krone, and at the 35-minute mark-ish, because this field is taking a little longer than I wanted, the half hour, so I'll go out in 35 minutes here. I'll start it from the parking position, and it's going to go to the first point, which I know is all the way across the field. There's a couple things I could optimize here, like I said, right? I could get that. I could cut out the last 2 or 3 rows, or at least the last couple rows, and just take that off. I know it's kind of a waste, but I know there's gaps in between here, and I'm not using up every square foot of the field, but I'm not getting within the hour right now as it is, and I just like that hour number, that just because all my stuff finishes kind of the same time, or whatever. Usually it's about 15, 20 minutes after, by the time I get the sowing done. So this guy decided to stop right in my path, so I'm going to get held up here. Wonderful, right? I could have picked any time in the world to send him out there. And harvester's coming, so come on, let's get out of the way. Let's acquire. Otherwise I'm going to hold up the harvester too. There we go. So yeah, everything's going to clear here. So same type of thing. It's going to go over. It's going to hit that pause point. It's going to lower and be on its way. And it probably won't. It's not going to catch that Krone necessarily, as long as the Krone keeps going, because it runs the same speed as the Krone, but the Krone has those delays, whereas this guy doesn't really have any delays. So I'll just fast forward the video here. He's on his way, sowing away. So there was an example. I caught the tail end of it where I had to wait for the harvester to fill at the end, and now I'm doing my 3-point turn. So kind of a delay, as opposed to if this was a right-hander that I with the rounded, it just would have gone around and the tractor would have filled it. The reason why I'm really fast forwarding this and showing it is this is where I'm going to quit on my what I call the 17 field combine. I'm sorry, I already did the 17 field combine. My mistake. This is where I'm going to just stop, jump over 3 accords, just to get my timing right. You see the Krone was nearly caught up to the harvester. He was on the adjacent row. That's another reason why I like to keep those rows a little bit further apart than the max of the combine. So I got those gaps between rows. So I'll start this one and I'll grab my tipper to get him out of the way, because the Krone's going to want to run into the tipper that I left over there, so he'll acquire again. An example of a sprayer. You can see I'm doing 2 fields at once, 26 meter width. We'll do that no problem. Or do a 12 meter on either side, no problem. After that, you need to think about it. In the background, we're now at the 56-minute part, so I'm just getting an overview from field 15, looking at field 18 over there, and we're on our last little leg, and it looks like the sower was maybe 2/3 of the way through. So here's a rounded corner. I got to do a different pattern for this because I'm not doing every row. You don't want to waste your time spraying every row twice, right, or something like that, because it's a much wider tool. So it's slowing down a little bit here because I'm going up such a big hill with a cheap tractor, but it's just going to go on its way. I just wanted to show same turn I would normally do. So here was the combine on its last leg, and again the Krone is catching it little by little, so they're going to finish close to the same time. One thing I want to do as I go forward here, I want to release that tipper back there. So I'm going to release him and send him home, and I'm going to acquire this one. What I wanted to do, because my tipper is adjacent to the field, is that stupid Krone will latch onto it as it goes by and drop some silage in it, and then I got to run that guy down to the biogas, which is a pain in the butt. So I usually take one of these guys, the one that's coming off, and I'm just going to put him in the path So the other one will run into them, and then I'll clear them later. This is the guy that I'd sent home that was at the top of the hill. So just fast forward a little bit here. Coming up to the end, that guy ended. So he's going to go off and refill the sow on 15. 15 is a much shorter field than 18, this part of 18, because 18 is a rather large field, and it's an awkward field. That's as opposed to some of the other fields that are large and not quite as awkward. So as this parks, you see it's going to stop. And I'll click continue once. I don't know why you need to do that, but that'll, when this, I'd already called the tractor over, requested the tractor. At the end here, you can see I got a nice green warning in the lower left in case you were off on a different field doing other stuff. When you're running multiple fields, that tends to be what happens for you. So this is going to fill. As soon as this fills, I'm going to send them home. If you look at the mini map, the big X is stuck in the corner up there. So I had a problem. I didn't use a turn, so I've trying to do a left-hander. It's stuck upon itself with the two tractors. That's what I was talking about. To do that every single leg if you tried to automate it in a different way. So yeah, if I hit continue, that the other guy's, the harvester is going to go back to the park position. I turned on the stop at the end, right? So this one I got to manually drive here. And then I can drive, and once I get out of the way, start it again. And yeah, that guy's running ahead of me a little bit. Slow down. Hopefully I don't run into the harvester. Heading back home to the parked position. We'll see. Probably get stuck in this turn too. Stupid Krone, but it is what it is. It's worth the money because, like I said, it's 40 grand for every truckload of this stuff, or 35 grand, 40 grand for every truckload of this stuff. So I gotta manually steer it here. But my point was, when I get to the end here, I'll go shut down the other trailer. As long as that one didn't get filled and go on its way. So let me stop this trailer here. So we don't need to be following the Krone anymore. Since this guy didn't get filled up, I'll send this guy home. And then I'll send the Krone on its way to the parking spot. Somebody's slipping. That's my, those two guys. So these two guys are going to unload the last of the barley. Bit of a log jam at the depot, but I think they'll all be okay here. That guy's done. And I had started my spreader. I didn't catch that on the video, but he's been plowing along for 5 or 10 minutes now, probably 5 minutes. Making the normal turn. Again, it doesn't matter with the spreaders as long as they start before the combine at the beginning of the next growth. You can do them anytime you want. They're not the pacing item. So barley, 430,000 minus 211,000, so about 219,000 or 109.5 tons. At 350, that'd be close to 40 grand. I think I'm getting 4 1/4 right now. Biogas is 1,600. And usually I'll have the flour mill or the train station or the closest to the silo in this American. Wheat always gets a little more money at the train station, so I tend to send it there. But you got to climb that hill right out of the silo gate. Barley and canola, I'm 425 for the barley, so it's better at the flour mill. So that's why I run that big long train back to the flour mill. So no problem, let's go do that. Set it to collect at the silo. I've got a course for that, and just change it to barley. Nearest point's good enough because it'll drive over there and load up. Let's fast forward here just to make sure we get started right. So there you go. All right, no problem. So I got some other stuff in traffic. That guy finished on field 15. That guy's in traffic, so I'll stop him, and they'll just wait for the next 24-hour cycle. So let's see what's happened down here at the biogas plant. We're not making any more deliveries. We're done with field 18. So I'm going to run over here. I'm going to change myself to a transport path here, or a driving path. And I've got a loop. This goes between 1 and 3 because I'm going to need to compact this stuff somewhat. So I'm at 507,178, 39% compacted. So as I drive over this, it'll compact it. But yeah, I got over half a million pounds, so 250 tons of silage at 1,600 a ton. That's a, pretty penny, 400 grand worth once we're done here. But in order to get started, I need to drive on it. So let's go do that. So you see it's compacting 41, maybe 42%. So another, I don't know, 20 rounds. So we'll just go off and do some other stuff while this, just you can see it just goes back through 1 and 3. So if there was stuff in 3, it would compact it there too. Somebody got hung up here. This is not my normal field 18, although technically it's on the dog leg of 18, but you can see what happens just in normal course. It runs into those damn fences, which are only 20, 30 meters off the edge of the guy, edge of the field. So I'll send him back on his way. That combine was waiting. Meanwhile, this guy here, this is at the 10:15 mark, an hour and 15 minutes in, so a little normal here. It's going to hit the pause, and it's going to fold up. It'll give me a warning down in the corner. Courseplay will let me know that I'm there. And I'm going to continue it. We've seen this cycle before. It goes and fills it up, even though I'm at 58% or down to 7,000. I use less than half my grain. I technically could just park it. Sower is coming in. I mean, the fertilizer is coming in right behind him. You can see him. He's disappearing on his way in the background. So let me wait for this guy. He's going to end in a little different path. Like I said, he's got a different path than the other harvester, combine, and fertilizer. So I just need to send him on his way. Once he's done, go back to the guy. Caught him just in time to. He's slowing down to fill up. So again, this is all automated because I'm on the working path method. So I'm just going to look in the background and see if that fertilizer pops his head. But meanwhile, this guy's going to fill up to 12,000, and then automatically will go on its way without me hitting continue. So I just want to, and the fertilizer is going to cross across, and the blue tank in the background there is where you fill up your fertilizer. It does the same type of thing. It pauses, fills it up, and sends it onto the parking. There you go. I can see that fertilizer just barely popping in the background. And he's going to loop around in front of those holding areas. So let me fast forward here, and while both these guys fill up and go back to their parking area. Ready to go for the next 24 hours, whenever the next growth is. So most of this is hands off, generally, except for when it gets to the end of the field. I get a little warning and I have to hit the continue button, but that's okay. I can take a look at things at that point in time. This one will pause, but it won't give me a warning. So as you cycle through your vehicles, you'll just see this guy sitting here like this, right? And you just stop him, or I guess you could leave him for 24 hours like that. It doesn't matter. And fertilizer is coming along in the background there. He's going to park next set of trees over. So we'll see how this guy, we're 10:20 now, 20 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes in. We're kind of done with the field work. So we could, normally I'd stick this up to 60 or 120 speed and just expedite myself to the next round of growth, but I've got silage to work now. So I'm at 100%. I'll press R and blanket this guy. Boom. So 12 hours from now, so at 22:21, we'll be, that blanket will come off and we'll be ready to dump those in the hopper. And that's one of the limiting, there's a limit to this hopper dumping. So I do want to show that, but we'll wait for that nighttime to roll around. Meanwhile, just FYI, I'm going at 60 speed, but my multiplier came up at the flour mill for canola, so I've loaded up the train with canola. Time to offload my 800, or I had, let's see, I got over 100,000 in that train, so 755 plus over 100, so 880,000 pounds are going to go through. I just have to watch. I am going to fast forward still at a very high speed just to get to that 22:20 time point, in which I'll turn it back to 1, so I'm not in danger of not unloading all that canola payload in my hours of bonus time, 1.5 multiplier. So these tippers, sometimes it doesn't dump the last one in this particular setup, so I might need to manually dump that, but whatever. Again, this is all automated. I don't need to worry about it. Here we're at 22:20. There you go. There's the release. I'll turn it back down to 1 speed. Looks like it's going to rain the next day, but that's okay for now. I've got it on a front loader path, so the far right pickup path. So I'm going to run it. I think I gotta have to set up the other one in the back because it wasn't working too well for me. But it comes up to this parking point, lowers it, fills up the shovel, and stops. So it's 6,400 pounds. Backs out. It's going to raise up and put it in the hopper. So again, this hopper will sort of guzzle 25 to 26 pounds a second at 1x speed, or any x speed, right? It's 25 or 26 pounds per second, but unfortunately there's a 20,000 pound max limit. So even with these shovels at 1x speed, it'll go off and pick up more and come back here quicker than it'll dispose. You see, it's got a counter dumping off 58.33, whatever, it goes down. So this guy's going to come back and dump a new load before the last load even got cleared at 1x speed with just one of these guys. So if you go to 5x, it still won't quite clear. It'll be quicker. Notice that when I dumped it there, it was 10 grand. So a little over 10 grand per dumping of 6,400. So very profitable. Very, very profitable in terms of making money. This guy, I'm going to have to set a course. So I've already set up, the dump heights. That's set per vehicle. So you just come up here, you start it, you hit your first pause. That's where it's going to put the plick gun down. You go forward, you put another pause. That's where if it reaches this other pause, it'll say the workload is done. So I just go halfway or whatever. Put on a reverser. Reverse back out. Little tractor with the arrow over the top. And then go forward. You just want to make sure you're clear of any obstacles. I also set these guys to run max speed, 10 miles an hour, including the BGA backwards. So it doesn't matter what speed I'm recording this at. They'll run it 10 miles an hour, front and back. If I send all my maximums, turn speeds, everything BGA backwards to 10. So when you get here and you kind of bump up against it, you put another pause point. You don't need to dump it. You can dump it. I'm gonna dump it here. Well, it's guzzling, so take that off. Let me reverse it. Come back out to the right. You can see they kind of hang up a little bit with each other, but they tend to clear each other. So we'll go forward to finish this leg, so it'll match up with the starting point, because it's just going to run this routine, and then at the end find the starting point. So you can't have it banging into walls. So you got to do your best diligence here. It doesn't really matter how efficient. The better efficient you are, the better off you here. So let me save that. Bio back one. Spell it correctly. B-A-C-K. 1. All right. So drive it. Again, the heights are set. I'll fast forward and have to go through this, and it just scoops up 6,400, comes over here, does the dump all right, so we're in good shape. So let me jump out of the cab. Now I got 2 of these guys working. I'm at 5x, and you can see it's not clearing that bucket quite quickly. You have to go to 15, and it will sort of run down. If you go to 30 or higher or whatever, then it'll clear down too. Clear down to 0, and then they'll just come over and dump buckets as quickly as they can dump buckets. So you see this guy runs up against the limit too. But I'm setting it up to 30 and 15, again 10 grand a unit. But you can do that all day long, run them free. So that was a big money maker. So that was my course on doing a difficult field 18, or at least partial of field 18, running an hour's time, running that Krone behind it because I hadn't seen a video on the Krone. So yeah, basically, thanks for watching, and happy farming. All right, I'm out. Got any questions, post them below.